it seems like we are most likely going to be going to dampening. I would say that either team does have maybe like a 10% chance if they get really good RNG on like crits or lava burst procs or just anything along those lines, they might be able to end the game faster than dampening, but it would be heavily reliant, I think, on RNG for these teams. Both of the teams are very tanky to each other, so we see a lot of pressure right now on the Death Knight, but they're actually just opening onto Fnobbers, the Druid, and he's done a good job to just gateway back to the box, get out of line of sight. He's not even going to have to trade out any early cooldowns. Now we see Walrus looking to try and load out a full row of dots onto the Feral Druid. Looks like they're going to be building up their initial pressure onto him. Now soul swapping those dots over onto Zonica, and Walrus is creating quite a bit of pressure for his team, but at the same time, Fnobber's on the back foot, forced to use that Iron Bark, and the damage is going back and forth right now from the teams. We see Zeepai going for Hex, he lands the full Hex, but once again, Nom with the instant dispel is going to remove that and keep his team moving forward in this match. That was the incarnation here now popped from Nom, and Zeepai recognizes it. He's going to trade out his Shamanistic Rage right away to reduce that damage, and he's going to kind of just bait the melee here to attack him. He's not moving back to his team, and I think that's smart positioning.
That was the incarnation from Nam there. They did force a fair few cooldowns, of course, the skin now coming out from Fnobbers. Now I'm actually doing a good amount of damage to him right now. There's no skin or Iron Bark, but that execute's not going to take. He should be fine. They're swapping it over onto Warwick's, down to 50%. Good pressure on Warwick's right now, actually. Looks like he's going to be okay. That was the heart of the wild from Fnobbers, and Fnobbers falling behind in that mana lead. Of course, this DK Feral can be scary before dampening. They do a lot of damage, and the purges, even from the Resto Shaman, if Zonica can get them off, will hurt Fnobbers. He's actually caught out of bear form in that bash. He has to trinket out of that. He's running quite low on coins, and they're just tunneling him down. They realize that before dampening, the LSD is going to struggle a lot to actually land a kill on them. They can afford to play very offensively right now. Fnobber's down to 50%, forced to Iron Bark himself. He actually has very few cooldowns, but he is top for now. It looks like he's going to be okay. Of course, Zeepai's Lava Bursts are not something you should ignore. He's doing quite a lot of damage onto Nam right now, who's already had to use one of his shield walls. Zonica looking quite healthy, though, keeping his team up. A nice triple Shadow Fury comes out from Warwick's there. He's going to try to get the Fear off that. He does get the DR Fear. The DK Frankie dropping quite low, down to 30%. That AMS not available for 10 seconds, but Fnobber's mana is low. He's Shadow Melts. He's going for a drink right now. He has no trinket available, though. They could maybe punish this. Looks like they're doing damage to Zeepai, who does have that Sham Rage available. He's down to about 60%, but I'd love to see him swap it onto Flobbers, and that looks like that's what they want to do. We do see the Grip come out, but it's answered by the Blink, and now a Bash comes out onto Flobbers. Maybe they're going to turn this onto Zeepai. He's not using his Sham Rage, a bit greedy here. Looks like he's going to be okay, though, down to 60%, and the team stabilizes for now.
We see Warwick's looking for a Fear on his Zonica. He's going to land that. Unfortunately, breaking to a Flame Shock tick, so a bit unlucky for Warwick's there. That CC is going to get broken up, but now he's choosing to pop his Dark Soul, building up a lot of pressure over onto Frankie, the Death Knight. He's down to half HP. Zonica's doing a good job just spamming those Riptides over and over, trying to hug the pillar to make sure that he can dispel dots on demand. It looks like they're setting up a swap to Fnobbers. He's forced to use that Bark skin. He's doing pretty well to kite through this Strangulate so far. Now the Soul Reaper is up. He could potentially be in trouble if Nam is able to connect whatsoever. It looks like they're just splitting their damage for now, as Zonica is caught into a Fear. They're following up with a lot of damage under the Death Knight. He's down below half. He's going to recover with a couple Death Siphons, a little bit of instant healing from Nam. He's going to be fine now to recover. Mana seems to be fairly tied, and the mana on Zonica and the mana on Fnobbers is going to be really the story of the match. Whoever runs out of mana first is the one that's going to be behind. We see Fnobbers, he recognized that. He's trying to sit down for a drink. I don't think he really got anything. Nam did a good job to shut him down, but now Nam is overextended once again, similar to match number 1, and Zeepai sees that overextension. He's trying to punish him. We see Fnobbers, though, getting gripped up. He does not have Bark Skin. Smart decision to trinket out of that stun and blink away from these cleaving melee. We see Fnobbers looking for a clone, and I'm not sure if Zonica didn't have a win shear, but that clone onto Zonica is going to put his team fairly far behind. If Fnobbers is just chaining the Cyclones over and over, we can see a lot of pressure onto Nam. He's down below 16% HP. Is he going to be able to make it out alive? Walrus is just draining his soul. Sonic is dropping that spirit like it picked him back up to half, and now they're bringing the aggression forward onto Fnobbers with this incarnation. They might be able to burst him through the Bark Skin, but at the same time, every time this Death Knight moves forward to try and get some damage out, he's punished very quickly by Zeepai. Fnobbers is still on the run, though. He's silenced up. He doesn't have very many cooldowns remaining. If they could stick a little bit longer, they could easily finish him off. Zeepai really doesn't have anything to stay alive either. Both of those players in a lot of trouble. Fnobbers is just spamming heals, trying to keep his team alive through this very scary moment. We can see Walrus even rotting down a little bit. The next stun onto Fnobbers might be the game.
Unfortunately, he even took the eye there, taking so much damage, and Zeepai might just go down here, down to 2%, and that will be the end of the game, tying it up 1-1. Well played by NWA. I was wanted to compliment Fnobbers on how well he was playing the game, like drawing them out so that Zeepai could do maximum damage to this DK and Pharaoh, but in the end, the incarnation, he just couldn't recover. They didn't have anything left for it particularly, and Zeepai ends up falling, so some good swaps coming out from NWA. They're not really tunneling a target. They're just kind of getting the spread pressure, and I really like that. Floppers is really falling behind, especially the fact that he has to keep going for these drinks to keep up in when dampening should hit. It's just too much for him, and I don't know. Maybe Zipai could have healed a little bit more, or maybe it's just the small map. But that game looked quite rough for them. It was kind of like the first game, but without that being able to reset and get the mana back.
Yeah, I think the map is going to be a pretty big indicator for both of these compositions. So the one team, NWA, they're a melee cleave, so they need to get in range to attack their opponents and overextend. So on a smaller map, it's easier for them to connect. Now what I would expect from Trolljagarn is something like Trolljagarn Arena, which is a very big map. I think it's the biggest map in the game. And then they can pull the melee out into the open to a point where like there's no line of sight. You can't run or hide from the damage, and they can kind of pressure them that way. And I think on Trolljagarn that we're going to see a reverse of the situation that we saw here, and Trolljagarn will have much more control.
Yep, I completely agree. Of course, we are starting a little bit late, guys. Just for those of you who've come and joined us, we're very happy to see you here. We are sorry for the delays and the small little issues we've been having over the last couple of days and even last week, honestly. This should be the last weekend where these things are happening. Our main streamers, Dana, I cannot talk, Hannah and David, are going to be moving before the next EU GPL tournament, so we shouldn't have the same ISP issues. But we thank you for joining us. We are 1-1 right now. We have Trolljagarn, who actually won the first GPL and looked so strong, taking out some of the best teams in Europe. In fact, probably, yeah, exactly. We had basically the best teams in Europe competing, and Trolljagarn came out on top. But they are tied 1-1 here with NWA, so this looks interesting. I wonder, of course, both these teams do have a lot of compositions available to them, and maybe they will consider a comp swap here.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Ellie Mage would be better at least on an open map if they know that they're fighting Ebola, and now with the way that the draft works, Trolljagarn know what comp they're fighting, and yeah, they're going to respond, and they are going to change their composition. So we're going to have Leaksy coming into the fray on his Frost Mage. And this is a kind of, at least for me, a new composition to see in the tournament scene. They won with this composition last week. It looked very powerful in their hands, and it's just so much burst. Like if anybody peeks their head out from a corner for a second, it's like you're dead. Like you get evaporated from the air of the arena as soon as Zipai turns over to you. So I think it's smart map choice. Good that they're adapting to the composition that NWA has brought forward. And I think that we're going to see complete domination, really, from Trolljagarn. I think they're going to walk all over NWA in this match.
Yeah, it could well happen. I mean, the DK in the FL would take you so much burst damage from Z-Pile, and just throw a mage into the mix. You could throw in a couple of Ice Novas when you see someone low, and that's a lot for Zonica to deal with. Zonica, of course, will be putting into more CC, but last week we did see that this Ellie mage did have a little issue with some unfortunate earthquakes breaking some of their sheep, so they do need to, maybe they've worked on that a little bit. They definitely need to get as much CC as possible into Zonica, and that grip does not deny this sheep, so the full sheep onto Zonica, this is a good opener for the Ellie mage potentially. They forced the rage out already from Nam. He's having to use that first survival instincts. Can they follow up with a reshape? It does look like they do get all three sheep, so they don't get too many cooldowns. Frankie dropping kind of low, the AMS forced out from him. We also see the pressure being swapped over onto Leaksy. The Ironbark, he's just getting killed through it. A nice NS comes out from Pnobis, but they actually stole the sheep. Well played by Frankie. The full sheep onto Pnobis could well force the block here, and that is the first block from Leaksy.
Yeah, and I said that we were going to walk all over this Feral team, but it seems to be quite the opposite right now. NWA are creating a lot of pressure for themselves. Zipai forced to use his Shamanistic Rage. Already an Ice Block out from Leaksy. They're still keeping up the pressure onto Leaksy, and Fnobers doesn't have very many cooldowns to keep him alive. He's going to need to spam cast healing here, and even with the spam casted healing, he seems to be struggling. I'm curious if Zonica is going to maybe spam some purges here soon to try and end the game. We see a defensive Ring of Frost landed. You can tell that a mage is afraid when they drop that defensive Ring of Frost, and now that won't be available in case he gets interrupted, but he does land the sheep for free, very important. But the Death Knight Frankie stole it and actually forced Fnobbers to trinket out of Leaksy's own sheep. Clutch plays from Frankie the Death Knight here, and now they're creating even more pressure. Leaksy is forced to use his final Ice Block, but as I say that, Zipai just going crazy, forcing a Spirit Link out from Zonica. Both these teams with some very bursty damage, forcing cooldowns back and forth, but I definitely put NWA in the lead.
Yeah, Frankie's playing this game so perfectly, actually, being able to steal 2 sheeps, and on top of that, like the communication from Trolljagarn, they're probably saying that the sheep's stolen, but so he's able to land it when Fnobbers is out of form, which is crucial that he cannot immune that sheep, because both of those sheeps have forced a major cooldown from Trolljagarn, who actually have nothing left. There are no blocks, and there's no trinket on Fnobbers. The next CC train could be the kill. They could even kill without CC. Looks like Leaksy dropping down to 70%. This comp is not working out for them that well. Zonica still has his trinket and 1 link available. Trolljagarn are so far behind right now. They're just kind of working on living, like you say. You can tell they're scared. The deep comes out now. They get the full sheep. They're doing damage to Frankie here. No AMS available. Maybe Zonica's going to have to trinket. Frankie down to 50%. He could be in a lot of trouble here. Spamming out those death items. They're swapping over to Nam. He's down to 5%. The Earthquake Stun might be the kill. They get the trinket and the link from Zonica barely in time. Nam's going to be okay for now, but that was a lot of cooldowns forced onto NWA, and Trolljagarn is still looking healthy. A nice preemptive iron bag from Fnobbers is going to keep Leaksy okay for now. His trinket's up in 30 seconds. That's roughly how long they need to survive. They just need to be careful. Make sure that Frankie isn't able to steal any important CC. I feel like he just got stolen on the clone there. A nice steal from Frankie onto that clone onto Fnobbers. If they can follow it up, they could kill Leaksy here. They don't have cooldowns for just a little bit. The nice NS comes out from Fnobbers, so doesn't look like they have anything to follow it up, and now Trolljagarn can go offensive.
Yeah, Leaksy doesn't have very many cooldowns to survive. He's on the run, using that blazing speed, trying to get away from these melee. It looks like they're not going to turn their attention to him. They don't want to overextend and throw the game, but at the same time, the Death Knight just can't get back to the pillar. He's forced to trinket, pops at AMS, they cut right through it instantly. This Death Knight's still in a lot of trouble, below half HP. Zonica caught into a full sheep. I think he might have missed his Windshirt on that cast, and now he's going to have to sit through this crowd control. Maybe they can finish off the Death Knight here. They need to keep this chain rolling. Another polymorph from Leaksy. How much longer can he keep this chain? Another polymorph. It doesn't seem like Fnobbers is in position, though, for a clone, so Zonica will leave the crowd control and be able to start healing his team, topping off both of the players instantly. Now we see pressure being brought forward onto Leaksy, but luckily his Cold Snap has come off cooldown, so he will have one more Ice Block to deal with any damage. Looks like they're counter-pressuring Nam, and now finally the positioning has finally been an advantage for Trolljagarn. They've got both these melee in the center of the map, and they're able to just tee off, so Zeepai is going to be looking to build up a lot of damage. He's already setting up some Earthquakes on the ground, getting ready to punish both these melees. The Deep Freeze is coming up in about 12 seconds, and when that Deep Freeze comes up, they're going to be looking to end the game. The Death Knight needs to be very careful moving forward for these next couple seconds. Maybe they should just retreat back to the pillar, because in this positioning, they're looking very vulnerable. Zeepai just punishing this Death Knight so hard. He's trying to keep himself alive with these Death Siphons. Here's the Deep Freeze. This could easily be the game. The Death Knight recognizes that. He's running behind the pillar, but it might just be a little bit too little too late. He's down at 19% HP. He's trying to get out of line of sight, but good awareness to know that this could have been the game. He's still on the run. He's trying to heal off the Water Elemental. Great job hopping that pillar to get a little bit of extra healing off that Death Siphon to pick himself back up. Clutch plays from Frankie, and he's going to keep himself alive.
Yeah, Trolljagarn is very much the offensive team right now. They actually force Zonica's trinket there as well as the DK to run away, which means there's very little pressure coming out onto Trolljagarn. Having said that, a good swap onto Leaksy is answered by the Iron Back from Fnobbers. Well played by him. He is kind of low on mana, but so is Zonica. I feel like this might not come down to mana. It might come down to the fact that NWA basically have no defensive cooldowns available. They could easily kill Nam or Frankie right now. There's no trinket. They just need to land that CC onto Zonica. If they can chain it with something from Fnobbers, who's actually sitting down for a drink right now, even mana's not an issue for them. They are just so far ahead right now. The block and the trinket still available on Trolljagarn. NWA getting put into the cross CC. Nice cross CC from Leaksy, followed up by a clone on Nam. Can they get the resheep onto Zonica? We need to see. He actually lands the Hex. Well played by Zeepai, filling that gap. If they can get a Cyclone off that, it doesn't look like they quite can, though. Unfortunate for them. The CC chain will break up from Trolljagarn. I feel like they could have pushed for that there. Maybe if they could get the Cyclone from Fnobbers, they could have pushed for a kill. But NWA doing a great job of kind of sitting back. They realize they're low on cooldowns. They don't want to lose this game, and it's quite hard for Trolljagarn to push in, seems like, because if Fnobbers especially pushes in too far, they can definitely expose themselves to a kill, so they're kind of reluctant to push in on this big map.
And the early pressure that NWA had is basically gone. Trolljagarn's cooldowns have basically all come back up, and now NWA are on the back foot, so Trolljagarn are doing quite a bit of damage right now to Nam the Feral. He's on the run, trying to get behind the pillar and line of sight these wizards. His Death Knight partner pulling back now as well, and really the only window for victory, I think, for NWA is like just a very bursty kill. They're going to have to kill through defensive cooldowns, and they're going to need more dampening, I think, to be able to do that. We see polymorphs onto Zonica, but Frankie steals another polymorph. He throws that over to Fnobbers. He's trying to create a kill window onto Leaksy. Little does he know, Leaksy still has a block, but he's forced to cold snap before the block came off cooldown, and now he actually has no blocks. Forcing this block, if that took 3 more seconds to force it, he would have another one. But because of the situation and timing, he actually has no more ice blocks left, and suddenly, not having a kill window, that's their opportunity.
Yeah, that's a horrible feeling for Leaksy there. His block was up in like 2 seconds and he had to snap before. That's if he could communicate that, maybe it would have been better for Fnobus to use the trinket on the polymorph, which of course, Frankie stealing these polymorphs has been the story of this game. NWA haven't had any significant pressure outside of it, I feel like. And now we look at Trolljagarn, they don't really have many cooldowns. This is the heart of the world from Fnobus. Once that runs out, he might struggle a lot with the healing. We're down to 13% dampening. Fnobus has no trinket, Leaksy has no blocks. He's down to 50%, gets locked on Frost there. They're just trying to shut down the damage from Trolljagarn. They sense they can get the kill. Fnobus caught into Strangulate right now. That will force the Sham Rage onto Z-Pipe. The Incarnation was used there by Nam. Unfortunately, they couldn't get any more cooldowns with it. This Sham Rage, of course, is going to be fine for Z-Pipe, but we want to see them swap it over onto Leaksy again. I feel like definitely the kills on the fastest trinket available. This seems to be looking quite healthy. It's it does. He's down to 60%. Zonica shouldn't have an issue topping him off, though. He is, of course, on that polymorph DR, but he still has to deal with the CS from Leaksy. It's going to be kind of hard for him. And he actually gets caught in the DR sheep. They're swapping up over from Frankie. He's down to 50%. A nice iron bark from Leaksy allows Fnobus to go offensive. He bashes Zonica. Can he follow it up with the Cyclone? He cannot. A good grip from Frankie stops it, but he actually gets it anyways. The trinket comes out too late, and Nam goes down. Insane burst coming out from Trolljagarn. I really didn't expect them to get the kill through Zonica's trinket there.
Yeah, it's all positioning really in the matchup. The melee classes are caught in the open. Zonika's out of range to use his Spirit Link, and it puts him in a position where Trinketing doesn't allow him to instantly access the cooldown. So it was unfortunate, but that's why Trolljagarn picked Tolvaron Arena. They picked the big map to separate NWA, and they were able to exploit the weaknesses in their cooldowns that way and take victory. Now NWA have the map advantage to be able to pick something like Ruins of Lordaeron. Even Tiger's Peak is fairly small. It's similar to Nagram, but I would definitely say it's much smaller than this map that we just played on Tolvaron. So I'm curious to see if that's going to work for them, because this Ellie Mage comp did not look very good at the start of the match. I would say that for certain. I looked actually very weak. I thought they were going to lose. But eventually it kind of stabled out to a point where they got their cooldowns back. They're getting safer and safer. So I'm wondering if Trolljagarn are even going to play the Ellie Mage again, or if they're going to get Walrix in.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good thing to discuss, because that game was actually longer than either of the LSD games went on for, I believe. That game lasting a good 7-8 minutes. And despite the fact that they had that mage, they weren't able to provide the additional burst that we wanted to see. They did get the CC, but their consistent pressure was just lower, which allowed NWA to play quite offensive at some points in the game. They weren't able to go offensive onto Fnobus so much. Perhaps those mage peels were deterring them from that, but they got a lot of damage onto Leaksy especially. He was just tanking damage whenever they could connect to him. They looked like they might be forcing a cooldown, especially with those sheeps coming out from Frankie. He was really MVP for his team offensively, managing to catch so many sheeps onto Fnobus. So I feel like that was quite an important thing. Maybe that's something that will deter Trolljagarn from putting in that mage again.
I also wonder if they decide to play the Ellie Mage, how well Windwalker DK would do, because that's Sonica's main composition. And now that they'll know what composition Trolljagarn is leading with, they can go back to the main comp if they think it'll be easier or a better matchup for themselves. I'm not entirely sure how Elemental Shaman Mage fares against Windwalker DK. It seems like it could be weak. It could potentially be weak. Or maybe even just having Zonica play his Paladin instead of his Shaman, and maybe he's more comfortable on the Paladin, and the Paladin cooldowns would have been more useful in that situation than the Shaman's cooldowns, with them playing with Leaksy instead of Walrix. So it kind of just depends what Trolljagarn decide to do. Do they want to lead with the Mage? Because if they do that, then maybe Zonica will play his Paladin to try and deal with the cooldowns in a different way. And I'm curious to see how that ends up playing out. Maybe they're just saving Walrix's, the pocket LSD Blades Edge Arena for the final match, and they'll just play the Ellie Mage again and try and rely on kind of that bursty RNG damage the Elemental Shaman brings for a win here, because this isn't their map choice, so they're already disadvantaged. And I feel like the Ellie Mage comp has more RNG potential chance to win the game than the Affliction Warlock version of it. The Affliction Warlock version is just a little bit slower. So it looks like that's what they have decided to do. Do you think that's smart? Do you think it's a good idea that they keep Leaksy in here, or should they have put Walrix in?
I can see why they've done it, because on Dalaran, Fnobus had quite a bit of an issue with the DK and the Feral trading him down on that smaller map. So I can understand why maybe Fnoba's cool. He wanted Lixie on his team. He feels more confident when they're training the mage. But like you said, I think this game they can't afford to lose it because they do have that huge pocket advantage of just having that LSD on Blazers. That's such a huge game to be able to have in your pocket just to win the series. Like the fact that they're ahead right now and they still have that option is going to be quite significant. So NWA, not only do they have to win this game, which is on their map choice and it is in what seems to be quite an even composition matchup. So I definitely think they can do it, but they are going to have to go through Works, Zeepai, and Fnobas on Blazers Arena, which not many people have been able to do. So that's going to be quite a rough challenge for them. We do see the Ellie Mage trying to build up their damage, the Earthquake coming up from Zeepai, of course, trying to get some icicles with that Blizzard and these Frost spots. Lixie just trying to build up those Fingers procs, trying to get as much damage as possible. He already has a Brain Freeze proc. He's going to go push in with that. Unfortunately, Zonica not quite able to ground the sheep, but it doesn't matter anyways. Good stops there by Frankie, able to get that kick. Lixie still has this Icy Veins up there, so they do need to be careful.
Whoa!
He's dropping down to 4%. Nam almost going down, popping that Survival Instincts just in time. He's popped his offensive cooldowns as well. They need to get something done with this. The Strangulate comes out onto Fnobas. That's going to force the Shamrage out onto Zeepai, but we also see the Spiritling coming out from Zonica. That was so much damage, and they actually get the full sheep anyways. Excellent job by Lixie getting that full sheep despite all the offensives coming out from Nam, who's still trying to do work. It does look like his target of choice right now is Lixie. Sorry, Zeepai. Zeepai down to 30%. He does not have that Shamrage available. The Iron Bar comes out. Looks like he's going to be okay for now. That was the Huddle Wall from Fnobas as well, so that won't be available for a long, long time. The good opener, I feel like the Ellie Mage actually didn't get too much with their sheep, and this is quite a good opener for NWA.
This looks to be NWA's game. They're looking very dominant in this position. If they lose this, they'll fall to losers bracket, so they need to give it their all. But Zeepai's just soloing Nam. Once again, he's down to 30% HP. He's going to trinket out of that bash and interrupt the Lava Burst. I don't even blame him. Zeepai's Lava Bursts are huge, and now they're pressuring Zeepai. He's down at 6% HP, barely clinging on to life. He wants to survive so badly, just spamming out these healing surges, trying to help Fnobbers out as much as possible. Now landing a cheeky capstun actually onto the Death Knight will completely pause the game. Quite a close call, though, for Zeepai. Luckily, he did make it out of it alive, and now he's going to have defensive cooldowns to rotate through, so he should be comfortable in this position. A Cyclone over onto Nam. I think that was perfectly timed with the Strangulator. Now we see still a lot of pressure on a Zeepai, now forced to trade out that NS and Shamanistic Rage as he was dipping fairly low, but now with those cooldowns used, they're going to bring the aggression forward. Trolljagarn maybe looking for a kill onto this Death Knight, actually choosing to clone him up. I guess they're going to switch their pressure over on Nam. Nam sees it coming actually and preemptively uses his survival instincts to reduce damage. Interesting reaction from Nam, and it seems like they held on to their damage. Now they're unloading it onto the Death Knight. Boom! Headshot! 4%, not enough to stay alive, and Zeepai, you know, that's the power that this composition brings, that it just has so much damage with the fulmination stacks, the icicles. They can generate these big burst windows that you don't normally expect, and if you haven't played against the comp very much, you're going to be very unfamiliar with it and you're not on an even footing, and you're going to get caught off guard and bursted down really fast like that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it looks so good for NWA that game, but like you said, maybe they got a little bit too offensive. They were trying to hit Zeepai this game, but of course that allows Lixie and Fnobas to cast a lot more CC. We saw a lot of clones coming out from Fnobas that game, and a lot of sheeps even to peel Zeepai onto the DK. So good plays by Lixie and Fnobas, able to exploit the fact that they were free that game, and that's going to put them through to the upper bracket. The next round for them, we'll see who they're going to be facing. Of course, we have our next series, which is Reawaken versus Kenitra Tigers, which is a